All right. Well, hey everybody. Welcome to Lemurstream 31, another big boy stream. I'm joined here today by the eternal Finn, Blitzy of the Europa Weekly podcast. Blitzy, how the hell are you, man?
I'm good. Coming here from Eastern European Standard Time. I just woke up early in the morning here.
Yeah, we put our collective high IQs together to coordinate all the time. So well done, team. And I'm also joined by David Cederwood. David, how are you doing?
I'm doing just fine. Glad to be here.
That's good to hear. Looks like our audio is good. I have a habit of starting and not getting my mic right and ranting into the void, but we've avoided that tonight. So let's see. Did you have anything on your mind tonight? I was talking briefly with David before, but I have a few things we can go through, but just lay it on us if you've got anything.
Well, nothing in particular. I was just reading the morning newspaper, finishing my breakfast before we started up here, and going through the normal Swipple newspaper. I like to start my morning off with getting really, really angry. Apparently, since ever since I started reading the newspaper again, I remember where I stopped because today there was actually it's a slow day. There was only one article about how we need to stop deporting and accepting more refugees, and also about homosexuals and other gayplex new 21st century morality and how it's important. And it's become a ritual now that every day I start with getting really, really worked up, and that energy keeps me going through the day. But it's nothing really that I can't. If I go into it, I'm gonna go on a hour-long tangent. So let's
So
stick
you're
to the
saying
topic.
you're a high thumos.
I am.
High.
Yes, yeah, right. I'm worked up already, and I've been awake for 1 hour.
Oh, that's good. So you're coming at it nice and fresh. So I've been up very early this morning. It's late where he is. So you're going to have to be the locus of energy on this stream, Blitzy.
No problem.
Well, I thought that we should start off with discussing this problem we have of moving from a phase of agitation and emergence to developing more complex capacities with which to engage our enemies. And you and I touched on this briefly when we were talking privately, and it did help me crystallize my thinking on this because I was saying, okay, we need these complex capacity, we need to develop these capacities. But you, if I remember correctly, said that in order to do that, you've got to have a certain input. So if we need to do X, then we need Y. And I think you were mentioning things like you've got to provide a kind of emotional incentive package. So yeah, refresh me a bit on what you were saying there.
Well, basically, the hard part is figuring out how to give people their dopamine hits. See, well, I'm coming from this perspective of a person who has slight ADD, and I get bored, I get distracted very quickly. So I'm a very good example of what your target audience in 21st century internet is going to be like. You're going to lose their attention very quickly. They're going to go away. They're going to leave whatever project you start just as rapidly as they join in if they're not getting that constant dopamine hit like that. So the perfect example would be the 4chan poll board, which got a lot of young people early on, starting around 2010 and onwards, got a lot of young people in on these kinds of, should I say, reactionary politics, these exploring these taboo subjects. And it wasn't because young people, teenagers, thought that, oh wow, I'm really interested in learning about esoteric philosophy. Oh boy, I sure am looking forward to reading an essay on criticisms about liberalism. What they really wanted, was, or what really was the pulling factor for the majority of people, which made it such a lively, huge community that spanned the world, is because people came there for the funny memes. It was the funny Pepe frog and the funny videos. That's was the biggest pulling factor. And then every time they came there, they were exposed to these new ideas, and we give people this brain sugar in the form of dopamine and new ideas. That's a great way of actually making the ideas stick. You pull them in with the entertainment value, and then you hit them over the head with the philosophy, the ideology, and the politics, the boring stuff. Because when I took as an example your writings on the internet, for example, not just on NPC but on other places, you write really good essays. You write really good, interesting, and insightful stuff. But for me, it's a hard time getting through all that text. I'm not very much of an academic, because I have a hard time sitting through and reading just walls of text. So I realized that even though you were spot on in what you wrote, you're not necessarily going to get the amount of people to engage with you and to read through that and actually get on your level of understanding with just the walls of text. And you need, as you said, that input there.
Yeah, I mean, I view that as a positive and necessary critique. David, what do you think?
Well, I agree 100%. In fact, there was even a meme making fun of this. It was, left-wing memes versus right-wing memes. The left-wing meme is just this wall of text about how bad it is to think this thing. And the right-wing meme is just like, lol, minorities suck, bottom text. And that's exactly it, You can't draw people in with just this dense, sanctimonious crap, basically. You have to draw them in with humor. You have to be a club they want to be a part of. And then you hit them over the head with the dense, sanctimonious crap.
Yeah, one has to come before the other. So like, I had a more like a personal experience from my private life, is that I don't go around with a folder of printed out poll infographics in my briefcase, posting them up and ready to pull them out in any debate, walking around the campus in my university, asking people to debate me. Rather, I I only discuss politics in self-defense, so to speak, only when necessary, which means that I mostly can fly beneath the radar, not having to constantly waste social capital on debating. But usually I want to do fun stuff. I'm part of fun clubs, and one of those clubs is basically like a student bar where me and my friends, who are close friends, who talk about everything, and we're all on the same page here politically. But we go there, the student union club, and we have a few beers, we have a great time, we have the music, and students come and they want to join in and have the fun. And then when we've had a few beers, everybody is, how should I say, like a bit greased up, everybody's having a good time. Then we can suddenly pull out that what, the social democrats are destroying this country, and maybe it's there you go, the Muslims did it again. Did you see what happened in the news? And then a discussion starts, and it goes for being such a just a beer hall. It has well, not surprisingly, as a beer hall, it has great conversational value, and that's when all these new guys who want to be part with in this clique, they want to join in, they want to have fun, and suddenly when this comes, they're more than willing to listen and actually absorb. And that's, I think, far more valuable, these real life networks with this real life experience you're giving people, and the knowledge they acquire through that is much more valuable than just posting infographics and long essays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you have to make a real connection with people for this sort of thing.
So let me throw the ball back into your guys' court. Okay, I accept the critique. I can see exactly where you're coming from. But I would say and what you're saying is if we want X, then we need this input Y, which you've just defined. But this would be my response. Although Y does help, there's a hard limit to it, and you'll never be able to push beyond a certain point with just Y. So this comes into the problem of moving from agitation during the emergence phase to some kind of coalescence where the movement gathers more steam. Responses to that?
Oh yeah, like definitely. Like at some point you need like genuine ideas. You need to know how to genuinely argue and defend your position. I think that's what you're talking about. I'm not, if I'm wrong about that, just correct me.
Well, I think even that is a kind of still in the agitational framework. Like we're still thinking of a discourse of a debate, even if it's quite propagandistic. But for instance, I want to examine things that pertain to actual power dynamics. And if that's the case, then we need to be able to do so at quite a high level.
Okay, I understand. So you're more along the lines of, okay, we have our community, we have what we believe. How do we push what we want? That's what you're thinking of?
Right, because what I'm seeing is like, I think apart from the faux pas around civil and all that kind of stuff, our agitational capacity and output isn't too bad. Like we've got red ice, we've got woes, we've got countercurrents, what have you. I'm sure there's stuff in Finland as well. But what we're seeing is that it's very easy for the establishment to start hemming in on that, to start suppressing it more. So like we need to start putting our eggs in another basket.
Mm-hmm.
And that means that we have got to find a socio-political technology that allows us to achieve X, but with a different input or with a complementary input. That's what I'm saying. So like perhaps it's something in that Donald Rumsfeld quote, about there's the things we know, the things we know we don't know, and then there's the things that we don't know. So that latter cluster,
unknowns.
That may be where our solution is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, looking at it right now, like what makes the how should I say, the loyalists of the system stop attacking you and your institutions? Well, in my personal experience, the best defense is kind of this sort of wall, the wall of boomer posting normies. Like I have many friends who cannot or will not spend, hours on the internet to research these ideologies, even though they very much are, they feel like the same way we feel, but they will not go on any intellectual pursuit of going any deeper. And these people, unsurprisingly love Ben Shapiro. They love these sound bites. They like Trump. And, whenever I've gotten into trouble to things I've said, I've always been bailed out by these, masses of boomer posting friends who go, well, facts don't care about your feelings and other such stuff. It's really this might not be, fully not be the best solution, but it's the only one I've seen so far as to, protect your quote unquote institutions, your boys clubs, is that you have these sympathetic people. And the only thing I can't really not that it sticks really, not that they would start to repeating more advanced ideas. That I have not been able to, but I can easily see these, show them some feminists owned compilation number 27 with funny music in the background on YouTube. They will eat that shit up and they will share that around. That's the stuff that they, normal people love. And that actually I can see being translated from thought into action in the real world. Unlike, when I try to talk about, let's say, Ebola, that just doesn't stick, at least. YouTube being the number one format for making people consume ideas that then translate into action in the real world.
Did you have a comment, David?
Well, it's kind of, I can't disagree with what he said. It's kind of like if they want to censor you, they have to fire on a bunch of innocents. Basically, that's kind of the idea of that. I think you make them have to like go through a bunch of bodies who didn't really do anything wrong and can be far more sympathetic and can, bring a lot more agitation onto them if they try to censor you. And I agree. I mean, maybe they did censor Alex Jones, so maybe we're kind of past that point a little. But
yeah, it's wouldn't it be like, how big is Alex Jones's listener base? Is it 30 million?
The thing with Alex Jones is it's very hard to gauge how much of it was just him being kind of a kook at the same time. Because I think we can all say he's a bit of a kook. I mean, he's entertaining, his heart's in the right place, I'm sure. But yeah, but he's like 3 million YouTube or 3 million fans on Facebook. It's one of those. I can't quite remember.
Yeah,
they're all kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, but see, wouldn't there be some sort of positive lashback if these kinds of people that are popular, like Alex Jones, basically are martyred by big tech, just in a big media spectacle like he was just recently?
There definitely is. It's I guess the issue is like, is it enough to change things? And I mean, I suspect the blacklisting of Alex Jones is part of why Trump is tweeting about social media censorship now. So, I mean, if that's the case, then yes, it worked, assuming it leads anywhere. And Jack Dorsey is like, even though Jack Dorsey wasn't behind the banning of Alex Jones in any way because he's still on Twitter, but he's having to testify in front of Congress now. Whether it's anything more than just a show remains to be seen. But I mean, I still agree that you need a lot of these normies just kind of in the way, soaking the bullets. That's a cynical way of putting it, I know, but
but taking up the attention, as one of my one of my friends in Sweden did an analogy with what's working in Sweden. They have the Nordic resistance movement, who's sort of like a 1.5 white nationalist outfit. They've taken the 1.0 ideal and then just perfected it, and they're going around with their rune flags and shouting "Hail Victory" and doing the salutes and talking about deporting all the Jews and foreigners, ending Zionist grip over Sweden, and so on. And these people soak up so much of the media attention. So they work like exactly like that shield of normies, but from the other side of the spectrum in Sweden. Nobody in the media can stop talking about these guys. Nobody's going to vote for them. They're just so fringe that they're not going to do well in the election. But they're, as my friend said, they're aggroing the libs constantly. The libs cannot stop, spitting at them, protesting against them, and writing long articles about how this has to stop. This is an attack against democracy. And it's just, a bunch of like maybe 1,000 activists that they have in the country that like to signal a lot. And, it's driving them up a wall. And that means that, how should I say, they're releasing their broadsides on this very fringe and unimportant group, really, so that the real people, the guys with a bit more IQ over room temperature, who's actually working the political game a bit more smartly, are being able to have it a lot easier without getting constantly harassed.
That's really smart of them. Wow, that's actually really great. They're doing like kind of like what Trump would do during the election, where he would constantly change what the media had to talk about by just tweeting something, or or he would say something that's kind of wrong, so the media would correct him, but the correction still ultimately benefits him. That kind of stuff, where he's just aggroing all their attention, all their just hysteria, and that's really effective. Just hysteria baiting leftists. I mean, that's what people like Ben Shapiro, Gavin McInnes, all those guys do, and it has absolutely worked for them.
Yeah,
in some ways, I respect him more. That's kind of what Tucker Carlson does. He gets like the dumbest people on his show sometimes.
It's like the more emotional your opponents are, the more easily they are to predict the reactions and bait them into making a fool of themselves.
David Hines, I don't know if you guys are aware, he's sort of a...
Hradska?
Sorry?
Hradska, that's like his at, right?
I'm not too sure. I just know him as David Hines. He's like a right-wing approximating strategy guy. He does some interesting threads. Now, just relating to your point, David, about hysteria and emotionality on the left, he had a tweet storm in which he said that although the left will chimp, they also channel that energy into organizational structures which can affect real change.
Mm-hmm.
So you do, and again, like if you're looking at those organizational structures in various liberal authors who study this kind of stuff call it infrapolitics. It's a combination of politics and infrastructure. So it's basically the wheels which enable you to do anything, and you don't see that in the media because, again, you don't want to be revealing this. It looks like you're manipulating public opinion, and of course the liberal media are not going to reveal it, but like that's how they can have massive marches all of a sudden. They don't just come out of thin air, even though we know there's oligarch financing behind them. That's years, decades even, of experience in network building, all that kind of stuff, which doesn't relate directly to agitprop. And that, I would say, has more to do with the second and third phases of the social movement. And it just shows you what you can do when you have those more advanced capabilities. You and I were talking earlier about your project. You're refuting common like racial anti-race realism straw man, and you were saying it's just noise until you can position it such that it can be inculcated into the mass consciousness. So let me throw this out there. While retaining our agitprop agenda as it's configured at the moment and even improving upon it, shouldn't we also be devoting energy to developing these kind of structures which can reach a far greater swathe of people because they're actually in a position of influence?
Yeah, like even something like a reading list. I mean, not reading list, a mailing list would be a great start. Like what was it? What would we do? We would tell people to tweet at certain accounts to give them attention to an issue. Something like that would be a good place to start. Obviously, that's not enough, but I definitely agree. We need to start somewhere. We need to have something going that we can learn from, build on, and sort of gain momentum from. And I mean, the issue is always knowing where to start, and so that's kind of my idea, is something like that. Because what's his name? Evan. He goes by Evan now. It was Worst Poster. I think that was what he was. Nuke Me Daddy. That was his old at. And he does threads on this.
Zarathustra Jones, I think, was the old account.
Yeah, that's right. It was Zarathustra Jones. And I always got him confused with Zarathustra Serpent, who's totally different. But yeah, he does threads on this all the time where he looks at these relatively simple left-wing organs that basically just signal boost to other leftists to dogpile an issue and where to dogpile on. So there's one that's like, it will list advertisers to contact if a right winger like Laura Ingraham or Tucker Carlson say something bad. And that's really great. I mean, that's like a mailing list and then some. So stuff like that is absolutely what we need to copy. And I mean, it's that stuff wouldn't be that hard. I mean, it's not that's not the end all be all of the left's power. They have power in academia and in the media that is a lot more expansive than just that. But that's a great place to start because we could really start punching above our weight and make this more of a fight if we just copy things like that, even on a small scale.
Definitely. Blitzy, any thoughts on that?
Well, I fully agree with what Cederwood just said. I mean, it actually was very concise. I don't have much to add to it. I was thinking of a different thing just now. I'm thinking a lot of trying to keep my hand constantly on the pulse of the internet, and very much so young people that are younger than me. What's the new stuff? What's the new jokes? What's the new trends? And keeping up with these things to basically gauge the zeitgeist of what we're living in. Sort of, because usually that's how when I get inspired by some new trend, I can, it hits me and I can make a funny meme picture relating to that. The way it's what I like to do. But something that I notice a lot is this I'm not old enough to say how new this trend is, but it seems that it's constantly becoming more and more ironic at every level. This constantly this sense of post irony, where you are expressing and playing with ideas that you don't hold, so much so that you do hold them or you don't. It's post ironic. So it's when you become so enamored, so taken by this culture of irony constantly, that you can only express yourself ironically, and then this ironic expression of your identity becomes your genuine one, but it's also somewhat wink wink ironic, but it's not. If you've probably seen similar cases, because I've noticed that in myself, that sometimes I'm being so ironic that I can't tell that, wait, don't I also slightly genuinely hold this belief? It's very confusing sometimes when I so seamlessly when trolling leftists, I can seamlessly go from being a fascist to a tanky and or a libertarian. That sometimes I forget when I'm being genuine and when I'm being ironic. This is there was one guy I read, the point of this whole thing, one guy that I read that said that the reason for Generation C becoming so quote unquote conservative is because they've grown up in a culture, in a world where there are no norms, and there's just these constantly there's an infinite different ways of expressing your identity, and your identity meaning also your sexuality and your gender and everything, this and that, in so many crazy ways that they really just yearn for normalcy. And this has led to cringe culture, where it's instead of being this culture of be who you are, express yourself, the reaction that has come sort of naturally by this new generation coming into this world of pure chaos is just that this is cringe, that is cringe, this is cringe. And what it does in effect is that it enforces on a social level, this normalcy. Don't step out of line or else you're cringe. Don't don't express an ideology genuinely. Don't express beliefs. Don't express something out of the ordinary genuinely, or else you're just really cringeworthy. All belief systems are cringe, and it's I think it's just a natural reaction to a world filled with too much chaos. These people, they just really crave normalcy, and that's why especially in the circles that I'm try to spend a lot of time in on the internet. I notice that a lot of the guys there are younger than me, and everything is just cringe. It's bad, and they want to. If you want to be something politically, you have to do it ironically, and you have to make it understood by the counterpart that you are being ironic. You're not genuinely holding these ideas, because if they fall for it, if they take you seriously, it's kind of like a "ha, gotcha, grandpa, thought I was being genuine there, doesn't understand irony." So cringe. That's basically the gist of it.
Are you suggesting I'm an ironic groper?
No, I'm saying that you're a cringy one.
Ooh, the thin brings the dance.
There's in this new post-Trump world, there's only cringe and irony. There's no in between. There's just those two poles.
Interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, but it's what to do with this information, I'm not fully sure yet, but it's at least it gives you a framework of how to look at how I feel like the especially the younger people are looking at the current state of affairs.
Let me ask another question. Where do you two position yourselves on the elitism democracy scale? Like, what changes things at the end of the day, and to what degree, if it's a combination?
Well, I mean, obviously both. I mean, that's a pretty milquetoast answer. Elites set the agenda. People vote on it to sort of give legitimacy to the agenda, that sort of thing. And usually the elites, like the YouTuber Sticks Hex and Hammer use this term that I like. It's wedge issues, where it's sort of specific issues that just are used to get people to agree with their broader agenda, even though there are parts of their agenda that are wildly unpopular. If the whole election is about these certain wedge issues, it won't matter. And so I think it's I guess I fall on the elitist scale.
I don't know. Once a great man said that it's a greater chance for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a great leader to be elected democratically. I'm a bit more prone to disagree with that. So I'm far more in the democratic camp, as I have a lot of faith in people, and I have a lot of faith in people to not necessarily always understand to do the right thing, but they will more generally than not do the right thing if you just lead them. Maybe I don't know. I do see that all the great social changes that happened have their roots must come out of the masses, the hundreds of thousands of people who are open to these ideas and who are willing to embrace them and who are willing to not just believe in them, but also have the ideas influence their actions and their decisions in life. And this comes from being able to have ideas that can pass through these hundreds of thousands of filters for each individual person, that they can go, oh yeah, that's actually a good point, and they don't think about it, but afterwards that idea has taken a root in their head, they translates into action, and that really frees the hands of the people in charge to set new agendas.
Yeah, I definitely think repeated populisms will matter. Um, yeah, I always, my theory on the people is they may not be right, but they know when something is wrong. And I notice this a lot with Trump voters, and obviously I agree with Trump, and a lot of them they couldn't really explain why they were voting for Trump, but they knew something was wrong with the country and the parties and the leadership, and that there was sort of they knew that it was weird that you couldn't even talk about immigration restriction, and because basically that's what got Trump started. He talked about immigration restriction and the wall, and he was savaged by everyone for that on all parties. And a lot of people just noticed that that meant like there was this huge disconnected elite that was setting an agenda and he disrupted it. And so I think that I think what you said was absolutely accurate. Is they need to be led by someone who has their approval, obviously, but they can do great things like that.
Yeah.
It's a significant question because I tend to fall more on the elite side of the spectrum. Although I'll grant Blitzy that the people do make choices within certain parameters, those parameters and the resultant discourse is generally conditioned by the legitimacy regime downstream of the soft power hegemony. So if we're going to change or challenge that soft power regime, what we need to do is recruit and coordinate human capital, which is basically the raw power of politics. And so that changes the way that you're going to agitate, and like it's no longer about converting a critical mass of the population. It's about a qualitative strategy of selecting out people who have real agency, especially when they're combining with other people like them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It's just translating these few people, how should I say, leveraging these very few people in a way that they can actually have the effect that you kind of want on society. Because as far as I know, in society and generally affecting these as you said, these soft power structures, the best way of changing them is leveraging your want to change with the numbers of people. At 100,000 dimwits who only just have their heart in the right place can do a lot more than say these creme de la creme, the 50 brightest and most active and high agency people, because you would have to be very lucky to surgically insert these people just where you need them and to do exactly this or that. The translating their actions into meaningful change within these structures is incredibly hard when there's so few of them. That see, this is why I'm more of in the democratic camp. That these just sea of bodies that can all just that think and feel in sort of the right way, they can actually accomplish so much more if just led to their own devices.
Will they be left to their own devices, though?
Yeah, well, that's of course it's a synergy where they are constantly interacting with the other the how should I say, the other masses, the other groups of people who are not similar to them. It's the synergy that happens between those. And if you want to see what I'm thinking about, do you remember back during the presidential election, during the Republican primaries, you had Ted Cruz, who was he was down on his luck after Trump had really beaten him down, and he had made up this new what was that word? Lying Ted. He had started calling him that, and people loved it. They, his base just soaked it up, and then he's going around in some backwater town and is trying to debate, saying how Trump is actually tricked you guys. Don't vote for him. And this random guy, it's just an average Joe, is just going, Lying Ted, there he goes again, and absolutely like verbally demolishes this Ted Cruz that I think definitely he has a far better education and is far more like intellectually inclined than probably anyone in that town. But he got absolutely demolished, and his ideas, or his view, dream of an American presidency, were absolutely crushed by this average Joe, who was very good at throwing slogans at him that he couldn't parry, and was able to. I mean, Ted Cruz was the debating club champion of his home university, which you couldn't tell when he's being there, like being destroyed by this blue collar guy is going calling him Lying Ted and this and that. And this is the kind of synergy that I'm talking about, where you have these people that don't fully, they don't need to read Evola to understand that you want to maybe rebel against the system. But what they do revel with is these sound bites where it's very powerful when a blue collar worker man just stands up and mocks these people who have come down from their ivory towers to talk to the people. They get absolutely demolished, and that synergy really speaks when you get these people. You just feed them the right information, and then they can do all the legwork for you, and then you can leverage change just via the vast numbers of them there are.
What would have happened had Trump not run? Couldn't you construe Trump's campaign as a split within the elite, thus manufacturing consent, to use Chomsky's term?
Yeah, well, manufacturing consent. I think the consent or the support for Trump was always there. It was just that's the help that needed to come from above, was to simply give the people an option. And as soon as Trump became an option, it was pretty much set. Well, then again, Trump is sort of larger than life, that he can overcome these things, that he's such a huge personality that I don't think a normal person could really could do what Trump has done, not just business-wise, but also politically. Just this hurling abuse at him at such a volume, through every channel, every day, for every week, for every year, and shrugs it off like it's literally nothing, and it just keeps on, going forward and keeps winning and winning. That's the it's the kind of winner archetype that people will naturally flock to once you just give them a chance. So yeah, if you have these how should I say, natural aristocrats like Trump, these sort of larger than life figures, definitely if they can just act within the elite, then I mean, I'm really taking a lot of the agency away from Trump. Like I just think that he's some sort of a demigod automaton that will just do these things naturally, and then the masses that are the active part. But sure, you can turn it around and look at it from the opposite direction, and it would make just as much sense. But definitely, there is some synergy here between the two camps.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely think it's not just elites or anything. I'm just more on the elite side of the spectrum. David, did you have any thoughts before I respond further?
Not really. I mean, I think this is going to be like what side of the spectrum you're more on, because I don't think either of us are completely elite determinists or populist determinists. And so I think that's kind of going to be the way this progresses. Because, I agree, like, the agenda needs to be set by someone like Trump, which I think Europa said and agreed with. And I think consent is always going to be manufactured, as you said. So you need someone manufacturing the consent you like. And, you need someone to engage people in politics, because most people aren't going to be engaged in politics. Well, the people who are will set the agenda and the parameters. And yeah.
Yeah, sure.
And the ones prior to Trump, they did not want immigration debated at all. They wanted the whole election to be about who would bomb the desert better and who would get you 4% growth or something.
Mm, mm. What about when it comes to building up the metapolitical consolidation of Trump's agenda? At the moment, we have him and his team grappling with the deep state and the administrative apparatus as a whole. There is an interesting article by George Hawley at, I think it's Liberty Review or something, but he talks about the lack of institution building when it comes to the MAGA policy spread. And he says that this is a problem because unless you have that consolidation, that kind of embodiment at the level of mass consciousness, or at least the structures which mediate mass consciousness, it's very easy to break apart a political coalition and reverse its gains.
Yeah, it's very easy to just be a flash in the pan. It'd be very easy for Paul Ryan or someone like him to come in and sort of retcon Trump into being more of a generic conservative. Because, I mean, I saw this on Are the Donald once. They were really happy Trump passed tax cuts, which is not what Trump ran on. It's more of a Paul Ryan agenda. So it'd be easy for in the future to say, oh, Trumpism was about being aggressive to foreign leaders because he would demean them in tweets and passing tax cuts. So they could just meme Trump into being just a generic conservative with a neocon agenda and nominally free market ideas, which really just mean favors to big business. And that's also another issue, is not having institutional support about what Trumpism really is, which is reevaluating trade and immigration and basically a rebellion against globalization and globalism. And I definitely agree. The most I can think of is there was, I think, not the Hoover Institute, it's this California Institute I'll think of. There's a lot of big pro-Trump people who come from California for some reason. Claremont Institute. Yeah, the Claremont Institute. That's kind of it's the only pro-Trump or vaguely pro-Trump institution I can think of. It's based in Upland, California. And yeah, because right now the alt-right, as we'll just call them, it's Cernovich and Gavin and Paul Joseph Watson, and they're just, I think Gavin's probably the best, but the other two are just a loud voice on social media, and that's very tenuous, as we've seen based on the recent bannings.
If you want to be completely cynical and maybe a little too black-pilled, you can take that route that Ryan Falk takes and say that the best thing that the alt-right in Charlottesville managed to accomplish is to get Gavin McGinnis banned so that all the more moderate MAGA-peds could get upset over internet censorship.
That's a heavy cost, though.
Yeah. I mean, they... No, go ahead.
Oh, nothing. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a huge problem with Gavin. Of all the alt-right, he's the one I find the least objectionable in a lot of ways. in some ways he's like the worst, but I mean we all know what that is. But his stunts on air, but because he will at least kind of sort of give the devil its due. He'll talk to Jared Taylor. He'll compliment people like Peter Brimelow, whereas people like Paul Joseph Watson and Cernovich are just these shouty, empty shells.
Yeah, it's...
Sorry, Blitzy, go ahead. What you were going to say?
No, it was just that it's often forgotten with the people who are here on Twitter and on boards like, for example, NPC and others, that forget just the effect that Gavin McGuinness and the alt-right has. And it's often overlooked that they do work as a gateway drug for people who have, believe it or not, but spending this much time on the internet and in these circles of the internet is, the exception of the exception. This is not what the big masses do not, hang around where we are. We have our little cool, like fun boy clubs on Twitter and YouTube, the corners of the internet where we hang out. So most of the people are never exposed to our ideas, just through like herd immunity, being surrounded by liberals all their time. And they're successful. They have a job. They have an education, and they're genuinely pretty nice people. And they feel like, something's not right with all these, suddenly these Muslims everywhere, and all this chaos, and everything is somehow wrong. And then they find, YouTube algorithm, boom, Gavin McGuinness, Ben Shapiro. And I usually know that these people tend to come to me because I've expressed so many esoteric right-wing beliefs that hey, Blitz, have you seen this? This guy's called Gavin McGuinness. Do you know him? He's great. Or, wow, I just found this super cool dude. He's called Ben Shapiro. Wow, my favorite part is when he says facts don't care about your feelings. It's awesome. And still, it's hard for me to understand. It's a bit cringy, but it's the fact that I'm living with is that people are still, for the first time, picking up and seeing these alt-right ideas in 2018. And it's probably going to be that for the foreseeable future.
Yeah,
and that means that the service they provide is invaluable at this point.
Yeah, we were talking about this before we went live. Is there are a lot of people who basically became conservative because of Gamergate or something like that, and they basically just discovered conservative ideas. So they have this fanaticism of the convert. So they think it's like perfect, and the only issue is that society doesn't follow it enough.
When you get red pilled and you absolutely positively have to tell your mother about the Holocaust.
I wouldn't go that far.
You've got to watch with boomers, I tell you what. When I told my parents a few things, they immediately ran like way further than I anticipated.
That's funny. Sometimes when you think you were gonna, like, especially this zealotry of the convert. You remember when I was 18, 19, very wild things. I'm glad I only posted on 4chan poll, so I never posted under my own name. But still, some things I said, and it's fun, when you talk to people about these things, and you're very zealous, especially after a few beers, and every person has a different response to it. And I love this. This is why I love engaging with people, is that you can never really, you can guess sort of how they will react, but you will never know until you try. And just as you said, that sometimes it's like you push, but there's no resistance, and you just fall through. They take those ideas and they run far farther with them when you were expecting that, the normal response of pearl clutching, and how can you think this way? But this definitely do not see the the masses, the majority, as a monolith. because there's always an angle to work on people. There's a lot of ways to convince people of our ideas, and more content producers putting out more perspectives is usually a good way of gaining more support.
Here's a compromise for you, Blitzy, a grand compromise between the eternal Anglo and the eternal Nord. Are you ready for this? Okay, so we take your populism in the form of the masses, and we organize them within that populist agenda, and that organization is initiated by us, which is the elite component. So there you have a synthesis of both mass, popular democracy, and an elite acting upon that.
Yeah, that's a working synthesis. It's just the only problem is that society isn't following it rigorously enough.
Well, that's the kind of capacity that we should probably be working on building, right? And I'm certainly not talking about any. I mean, I like Identity Europa. I think it's one part of a broader strategy. But in this particular context, I'm talking specifically about building the MAGA brand at the local level by networking, organizing, initiating rallies, all that kind of stuff. So it's always within that populist parameter determined by Trump.
Yeah, absolutely. And preferably having, some people. You see, this is why I'm a bit worried. Just as if we go a bit back in the discussion about consolidating power in in America after the Trump presidency, is we still are in many ways in the same position as we were in before Trump, where all the media is dominated by these anti-Trump voices, and preferably I want all these printed newspapers to go out of business faster, and they're dropping subscriptions at a faster rate than they're doing right now. But it's not fast enough. You're still seeing all these journalistic outputs are just anti-conservative, and they do help. They are some of the pillars that really keep up the liberal establishment, constantly being able day in and day out to gaslight their followers into impeachment tomorrow. We promise this time it's going to happen. Keeping them energized, keeping these bad narratives going constantly, and we're still not seeing any big media outlets that can. What do we have? The biggest is, I guess, Judge Report, and in viewerships. But the thing is that all of these are on the internet, and that leaves them incredibly vulnerable to the censorship legislation that we've seen coming out of Western democracies lately. And it's just ban this IP, ban that video, ban that content creator. Some content creators even being banned from entering the country because they're so dangerous. So it'd be good if we could have some of the infrastructure that would be not vulnerable to this kind of legislation, the sort of that exists in the real world. Without the presence in the real world we should have is not having retard rallies like Charlottesville, but actually setting up a radio station would be better. A radio station would do a lot better to keeping up a local narrative within the bandwidth of the radio station. Every boomer would turn in, and you could dish out your hot takes on politics to these boomers in a 21st century perspective, to boomers that are open to it. That would make much better difference. Acting locally, if everybody acted locally on that, in their respective areas and in the real world. Because right now, when we're all on the internet, it's going to be like in that comic strip where Spordo Obama goes into office and it says click communist Islamism, and it's just turn off the internet, because that's what we're facing unless we manage to consolidate power now, and post Trump the Democrats take over the White House and the Congress, that we're going to see them basically, they're not going to give the internet a second chance of quote unquote interfering with democracy.
Yeah.
So what, if that's the case, then we have got to find ways of like evolving the capacity to actually survive when the system turns its rule book against us. Like, the harsh reality is that our presence on social media could be taken away at any time. And I think that a harsher crackdown will come because they no longer see social media as a pressure valve to release tension that builds up from their social engineering. And it's not because of there's like all these edgelords on it. It's because that these accounts are contributing to a real enemy in the form of Trump. So as we move closer to the midterms and also other populist elections that'll come up in Europe, I think we're going to see an extremely harsh regime come into existence. So what do we do?
Sort of when fighting government censorship, what our number one worst fear is them being level-headed and surgical, and then stopping while they're ahead. That would be the worst case scenario. And our strength lies in the fact that our opponents are neurotic dumpster fire women, and they can't stop, because they're definitely not driven by any shred of logic. It's it's an emotional impulse, and the see bad tweet, delete, feel good, that kind of stuff. And then it can constantly the bar is lowered. Anytime when no resistance is met, then they go for the next level, so to say. First the alt-right, then the alt-light, then the megapeds, and so on. So that our strength lies in them overreaching, them going after these innocents. And then you have all these, personally I do not like Sargon of Akkad, but I've been following him since 2014, and he has a large audience, and especially the Anglos love to listen to him and his message of liberalism. And it's going to be guys with a similar message as him who going to form the nucleus of resistance when they start overreaching with their censorship. They start coming after too popular figures, and that's our strength should be in baiting them really to keep overreaching and doing too much too quickly. That way we can actually get them to these large groups of people to get energized and upset and grrr, and then you actually get this is, I think we're really getting there in the fact that we have now King Boomer himself, Donald Trump, tweeting about this subject.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it was oh, sorry, David, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't going to say anything too much. It's it really does come down to taking away their power to censor us. And I think institutions we develop need to be geared toward that first and foremost, and then ways to pressure people into doing what we want or having who we want on, stuff like that. Because yeah, I mean the internet censorship has ramped up to a crazy degree these past few weeks, and it's probably going to get worse because they don't like anonymity, they never have, and now they kind of have a excuse to get rid of it with the Russian hackers.
Yeah, the Russian hackers that paid $2 to promote their status of boomer postings on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Democracy checkbox hack. It's, yeah, I find it pretty easily when to mock people with coming out with that narrative nowadays, because majority of them have just never been exposed to a counter narrative.
Yeah, and then like I've seen too many people who just call anyone who disagrees with them a Russian bot on Twitter for me to take it seriously. But it also means they've been gaslighted into believing there are that many Russian bots, so they could be led to believe that anonymity is shielding people hacking our democracy.
It's sort of it's a meme, it's a meme. These talking points are worth a 1,000 political essays. It's it's the democratic boomer equivalent of line Ted. They just repeat it. It has some sort of effect because that you're dismissing your opponent as not human, and therefore your opinion is not valid. Therefore, I win by default.
Yeah, and you're showing other people it's okay to do that too.
Exactly.
You're inviting people on your side to join in.
So the black pill interpretation of the removal of Alex Jones and Gavin McInnes and the like is that there's blood in the water now. Pleasure Man, interestingly enough, made this point at MPC, and his outlook wasn't sanguine, which is contrary to his usual position since Trump got elected. He said that, if I recall correctly, said something along the lines of what was notable was the lack of pushback from the conservative establishment, and therefore there wasn't. All it's done is it's informed these liberals that they can keep on going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have like Robert Spencer being taken off Patreon because of MasterCard.
Yeah. Or just build your own financial system. Come on, there's a market solution to this, David.
Yeah, I know. It's just build your own internet and financial system at this point.
Yeah.
You're not a socialist, are you? Thought you guys were right wing.
Well, we all know the essence of right wing thought is letting Silicon Valley do what it wants.
Exactly. The comic strip that really captures this is the one where the anarcho-capitalist ball that has the grin and the sunglasses with the pointing thumb up, saying, "I might not agree with your right to censor, but I will defend your right till the," and then after that everything is censored. It's just but it's basically that's how it's no, sorry.
Oh no, I was just repeating what you said.
Yeah, it's it's something that a lot of people have realized. I think this is such a new concept for people to put in a political coloring on Silicon Valley. But after Alex Jones and some of the other bannings, it's starting to crystallize in normal people's heads that Silicon Valley equals an extension of the Democratic Party.
Mm-hmm.
Trump made that very clear during his election campaign. He made it so that everyone understands that the mass media, they are just part of the umbrella organization that is the Democratic Party, and that vaccinated all the Republicans who have this party loyalty and this loyalty to Trump. They know that, okay, this every time they get a message from the mass media, they can in their head preface it with, okay, this is what my political opponents are saying, instead of thinking, okay, this is what an authority figure is telling me. And that's the big thing, it crystallized in everyone's head. That hasn't yet happened with Silicon Valley. People still look at them like the people used to look at mass media figures, that these are authority figures who know what they're doing and know what they're saying. But now, if we can just meme this enough so people start getting the message that these guys on Silicon Valley, they hate you if you're Republican, and they are in essence, the most active part of the Democratic Party at this moment.
Yeah, and I remember a guy who writes for Thermidor, Carlo. He had this term, institutional coup, where basically all the institutions that are necessary for the flow of information and the determining what policies are to be debated, if they're all converged to be liberal progressive, it doesn't matter if a Trump gets elected, because Silicon Valley will just censor the people who helped him get elected. The financial system will just make it harder for countries to act independently of one another, stuff like that. And I do think that's what they're going for. Silicon Valley is just the arm of it we're most familiar with, because we're the ones getting banned on, well, people like us are getting banned on social media.
Yeah.
So that's sorry, Blitzy, you go ahead and then I'll go.
Yeah. No, this is, I just want to make a short point to that. This is exactly it, that our sort of like our political speech, or what we value most is downstream of our personal experiences. And of course, when we are being exposed to this constant censorship and this fear of censorship, then we're going to talk a lot about it. We're going to spend a lot of time discussing it and going through it, threats and opportunities here. But we kind of, in order to survive this, in order to get from where we are over the hurdle to where we are safe from censorship, we kind of have to expose the normie people to the censorship, that they can feel like they too are being censored. They feel like that they too can write stuff on the internet and have to fear that, hey, am I going to be shut down or banned? And this can be done by proxy as well. There's some person that they really like to listen to, and then some figurehead, some talking head, and then that guy gets censored. Then that works just as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this it's good if alt-right figureheads are censored in one sense, but in another, it's sort of it's important for people to wake up to the threat of censorship.
Oh yeah,
in one sense, it's good in that if we were a little more organized, we could jump in there and fill that market with our own kind of gradiated people who can meet the MAGA crowd where they're at, but provide a conduit to us once again. And that's the critical thing. We've got to be able to maintain traction within the mainstream and also extract human capital from it.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not in favor of alt-right people being banned. I mean, I guess in theory I could be, if they're just really awful people who, like, not just people I disagree with, but people who I think are deeply immoral. But yeah, but I mean, yeah, that's a great point. I mean, if we were more organized, we could take advantage of the bans, which were happening anyway and are going to happen anyway, whether we want it or not. But yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to
I
comment
guess
briefly on.
we need more content producers, I guess, at this point, who aren't just on Twitter.
I just wanted to comment briefly on something you said before, David, and that's you brought up the institutional convergence that is always anti-Trump, and I guess the NPC crowd would add that this is a systematic effect. It's not just the actors within those institutions, it's the nature of large-scale institutions themselves. If that's the case, then this is what kind of pushes me toward the elite side of the um, spectrum when it comes to who has agency in the political space, because you're going to need people who are able to penetrate those institutions and reconfigure them from within, like understanding the informal networks of power within them. And from what I'm hearing, we have people who are already doing that. Some of you in chat will remember my interview with Faustian Spirit, in which he uh, elaborated on the these the networks within the college he was at, and how using activities, building up his own social capital, and understanding the nature of the institution and what people wanted within it better than his enemies, he actually asserted his agenda within that institution and changed the zeitgeist. So that's just one guy, really, although he was working with other people by the nature of the task. But that is an example, Blitzy, of our ability of small numbers of the ability of small numbers of people to change things if they're motivated, if they are well grounded, and if they have a thorough knowledge that they know how to apply to the world as it's currently configured.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a great man theory applied to our situation. If you have these guys that are of such a high quality that they can absolutely do this, they have that much social capital and social intelligence to wield these institutions to their own will and their own agenda, then absolutely these people are easy to pinpoint and say that this is the engine with which we will build up our consolidate our power and spread our ideas. Definitely, I can see that happening. It's just that I see that there's the other, for every one great man there's a 1,000 guys who work in support, which are much harder than to pinpoint. But when you see and you work your way up through these informal networks, you will know which guys I'm talking about, and those are the guys that they don't stand in your way, and they are willing to give you a leg up here and there. And those, the as much as we want to simplify it as the Nietzschean Uberman who just grabs the institution by the pussy and wields it to his own will and transforms it. It's the lot of the guys must have already been in there to make it happen. Definitely, he is the active part. He is the thing that the spark that lit the fire. Just saying that there needs to be the firewood there before the spark comes in.
Well, as one fellow white person once said, we didn't start the fire. It's been burning since the world's been turning.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't say that that illustration I gave as the example of the great man. Like, actually, it perhaps is in the other direction, not to diminish anything Faustian did, but he effected change by just working within his context. He was just one guy, and he affected a localized change. But if you, and like it reversed as soon as he left, but say he was part of a wider network, that may have been able to secure those gains on a more permanent basis and actually enlarge them or migrate them through the informal networks elsewhere. So one of the reasons I'm white-pilled on the ability of small amounts of people to change matters for the better is that, number one, unless we announce ourselves like we did at Civil, well, not we, but certain elements within the alt-right, they don't see us coming, and we can use basic game theory against them. We're pursuing a group strategy against a bunch of individuals who are individuals in relation to us because they don't know about us, you see, so they don't know that they should be pursuing a group strategy against us. And secondly, because the right hasn't done this. Like, we've got a huge amount of slack we can take up before we start to run into limits. And if we only studied network building, social capital at the granular level a little more, I really think that we could start to make some real changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I must say that Faustian Spirits, his actions were not to make them sound like they are above and beyond what a normal man can accomplish. I think that's absolutely within the realm that we can accomplish. But I like the fact that he did just, what I try to do as well is that you try to be a part of a local community and you try to influence locally. That way you can actually make this meaningful change, just like he did with this institution when he's these winning people over and influencing people. It's, you really, it gets down to it that it's people interacting with people at the end of the day, and that it's hard for these should I say, like, these new converts to really stick with it, or feel or even make the jump into saying that, oh, maybe I am a conservative, when they're the only conservative they know. They feel completely out and alone. But when there are some sort of institutional rock that doesn't necessarily need to be explicitly right wing, but implicitly someplace where they can have these interpersonal relationships with other people who don't constantly ask them to check their privilege or correct them on their pronouns. Those spaces and those institutions are very important, and that's within the realm of any person who just has the agency to do it can absolutely do that. Just yeah. Sort of lost my train of thought there halfway through. Hope that wasn't too much rambling.
No, I got the general impression of where you're coming from. David, can you think of any possible ways we can start, or perhaps have you got any examples of a similar sort of thing that we can start pursuing?
I don't know how to stop us from being censored, which is sort of my we should do this first thing. So I've kind of broken my own rule. There's this guy called Alt Cap, right, who wanted to do a poll team. Never came together really, but the idea was that it's a bunch of people who can spread awareness of an issue throughout Twitter and social media and generate a buzz about it. And I'm thinking something like that would be a good starting place. I mean, it's certainly not sufficient on its own, but That's really all I can think of. I mean, I need to read more about social networking and stuff too.
Mm.
So it's kind of another issue. Building like a legit institution. The only thing I can think of is you kind of have to give it a defensible name. So like you can't call it like the Society for Racial Hygiene or something. Like, but you could call it the Center for Demographic Studies or something. Something pretty innocuous, maybe a little euphemistic. Like well, the Frankfurt School is just called like the Frankfurt School of Social Policy or something like that. It was a very generic, mundane name that didn't give anything away.
So perhaps not like the School for an Ethnic Cleansing.
The Institute of Esoteric Hitlerism. Yeah, no.
Yeah, it's like the joke I like to make where this really upset guy comes into the chat room and goes, Harumph, I can't believe these libtards just censored us. This censorship is going crazy. They just shut down my server for 1488 white Aryan super warriors of Hitler. Can't believe this. This is like sort of, what was it, Patreon? When
Yeah,
they
Patreon.
wanted to do there's they could have just called it, literally whatever. Just could have just made it about an alternative pavement processing platform to offer as a competition. Left free market man tips his hat in your direction. Was just a competition, healthy competition with Patreon. Just call it something innocuous instead of just going out, this is Patreon, we give money to racists and people like Hitler.
Yeah, and also the name sounds like your competition. That's bad
That's the
branding,
one.
from what I understand.
Yeah.
So like they should have gone with the Nice People Finance Institute.
Yeah.
Yes.
The High Trust Finance Institute or something. I kind of like I like the idea of them being dog whistly names, but
yeah.
Yeah, did you see the guys started as a response to the ADL saying these things, hand waving away the things that are happening in South Africa. They started, instead of Anti-Defamation League, they started, what was it, the Goy Defamation League as a group on Facebook or Twitter. I didn't remember where I saw this, but yeah, it's like a
I think
thumbs up to thumbs up to those guys. That's definitely an institution I can look forward to making meaningful change.
Yeah. I mean, Anti-Defamation League is a great example. You would never know that was founded by like Orthodox Jews to combat anti-Semitism. You would think it would be like just lawyers looking out for defamation, but it's not even that. It's like you can't defame a group or something.
Yeah. What was it, the story behind ADL's founding? Wasn't it a Jew that had gotten caught red-handed for raping and killing a little girl, and then during his trial, this trial, of course, because it was such a heinous crime, he was guilty as hell. This led to a lot of anti-Semitism, and these Jews became worried that, maybe more of us will be put on trial. So they created this legal defense group and called it something completely innocuous to bail him out.
I don't know the specific story, but I do know it was specifically Orthodox Jews, because there's sort of this narrative of like based Orthodox Jews going around. It's like, well, no, I mean, they're not as bad, I guess, because they're less two-faced about certain civilizational issues, but
and they also keep to themselves mostly.
Yeah, but they're still, they still founded things like the ADL, and that matters.
So as we move into the last half hour, I generally keep big boy streams to about 2 hours. I find that's the optimal time. Blitzy, I wanted to ask you about any positive critique you can launch of what's happening in the Anglosphere based upon Finnish nationalism.
Well, seeing that one thing that really is the number one part of nationalism when it comes to these absolutely concrete things is symbols. And I'm glad to see that the time is behind us in American nationalism, where they wave all those cringy and terrible flags, but are putting more and more effort into, just as Patrick Casey is doing with Identity Europa, is that he's waving the American flag. And I really want to see more of the nationalists in the Anglosphere appropriating the flag as a symbol to mean them. We are the people. This is our flag, and it's the greatest weapon that exists. It's like showing a cross to a vampire. It's what flying your flag is to a liberal. They really do despise it, and that makes them just it makes for great footage. You have this we have this a lot in our country, because people, especially boomers, love flying the white and blue cross flag, and they really do not shy away from having a dozen of them at a rally. And you see these rabid leftists who are just parroting American slogans, attacking people with the flag. And that makes for a great picture in the newspaper, when you can see these people who Antifa, who look like criminals, gang criminals and thugs, attacking honest people who are not covering their faces with holding a flag. And you can see it becomes easy to crystallize in people's heads that this is the in group, they have my flag. This is the out group, they are bad. What they're called, leftists. Okay, they're the out group. It makes for great optics, great propaganda. And I love to see that. This is what the good thing is, that you can tell that Patrick Casey has a lot of influence from European nationalists when he's been here visiting us. Is that he's I think that point has definitely come home, that you appropriate these nationalist symbols to wield to your agenda. These positive things that already have and hold meaning in people's heads. So I love when I see they don't wave fucking Nazi flags or other garbage. If you're in the Anglosphere, you take your flag and you stand by that. That's what I really want to see, and I'm glad to see seeing more of it nowadays than we used to.
Interesting. Yeah, I certainly agree with that. David, any comments before I pursue the line of questioning?
No, not really.
Okay. Will do. Prepare to be interrogated, Finn. Is there any thing at the granular level of how you guys run your operations? And I know you've already described some of your red pilling strategies. Is there anything else there that you're doing, or which Nords are doing in general, that we could learn from?
Let's see here. I think I've gone over the most of the important parts, so I can sort of recap here. The most important part is, you can think global, but you have to act local. You got to create those local networks, because that's in the realm of capacity for a normal mortal being as yourself, is that you can get out there and interact with people around you, and you should never shy away from interacting with people, because every chance when you interact with people, you have the chance to learn something new and to make a positive, lasting impression on these people. And you have to you take these institutions, you walk into them, and you make yourself part of them, and from there you can start changing people's minds. For me, who's in university, that means student union bodies and so on, organizations that are I think, hey, well, what's going to attract people? The things that are fun, I go there, and that's where I can meet other people who like to have fun, and I know they're going to come back again and again. And that's the important part of making sure messaging sticks, is that it's not just a one-off occasion, but it's something that's inundated into your regular schedule. Also, very very Nord thing to do is to have this this Jante law, where you're supposed to humble yourself very much in order to in civil society, and that means you'd never ever start debating politics. Generally here, when you are the one who starts a debate, go on the offense to, oh, why do you think that, that type of stuff, then you've already lost most of the time. So it's good if you can bait people to attack you for completely innocent statements, but it's even better if you never ever start or have to debate the politics. You generally have to want to avoid that, but if you ever are caught in a debate, then you always double down, and you just never back down, and you don't you don't express any awkward body language. And what if you say what you think, with full conviction, and don't back down, then you generally walk away the winner from those engagements.
Yeah, I feel that Kiwi culture is actually quite similar. We do converge on new Nords in a way. Like we're very pragmatic, and so it's viewed we're conflict averse, so becoming aggro in social situations over politics is generally viewed quite negatively. Whereas in America, and I'm not saying this is as general, but there's a tendency to posture, I think, in American political life, and that can be reflected even in like an individual's monkey sphere, as sociologists call it.
Yeah, it's seeing as our society seems to unfortunately become more American every year. It'll just be a question of time before we'll be as conflict loving as the Americans on the other side of the Atlantic.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? Oh, okay. It seems like you are embedded within a network, organization, or whatever, which is pretty high quality people. How do you filter for that?
Do you mean, how do I filter for people coming in?
Well, the collective you, that is, like the broader productive and constructive elements of the Finnish movement you're part of. How do you identify the quality people and then integrate them into your group?
Well, if you know the what's it they called, the 5 personality traits that Jordan B. Clean Your Room Peterson likes to talk about, then one of the personality traits is conscientiousness, and that's basically the personality trait where you like to keep things tidy. You do hard work even when nobody's watching you, and you keep a tight schedule, you get up the same time in the morning. Those are traits for high conscientiousness people. Those people are worth their weight in gold if you can ever get them in on your political messaging, because it doesn't matter if they're, if they fail, if their messaging is poor, because you can always trust these people that they're gonna go to bed early, think about it, and then they'll wake up 6 in the morning, have a jog, and then they'll do it all again a bit better, and then they'll do it every day over and over and over and over again. These people are incredible. Now, I pretty low conscientiousness personally, so I have a lot of respect for friends of mine who are high conscientiousness, and I surround myself almost entirely with people like this. And the how you get them in is that you basically you get in a lot of people, but it's the should I say, you want to spend more time getting to know and having a good time with these people. As soon as you identify these high conscientiousness people, those are the people you want to really make sure that they're enjoying themselves and that they have a fun time and can like integrate into this, network of people. Yeah.
Okay, so you provide value to a certain type of person. What do conscientious people like to be around?
They like responsibility. They really excel when you give them responsibilities, and they feel like they are a valuable member, that they are relied upon. So usually it's counterproductive if you think like a low conscientiousness person like me, that I tend to admittedly shy away from responsibilities at times. And but these people, they really love it when you shovel titles and responsibilities, and then give them praise for their work. This is something that they're attracted like flies to shit, this type of stuff. So, and it also, you just you just need to get the people together with the fun, and after that you start putting the pins in the ground to build up a structure, and then the structure requires work, and from the work comes the need for people to hold responsibility, and that's where you start to fish out these high conscientiousness people who love to be the pillar that everyone relies upon.
That's interesting. Yeah, I can see how that is exactly what you need. I mean, it's really discipline, would be another word for them. That they're not prone to reactive modes of thinking and acting.
Precisely. Yeah. There's like I'm more of a people person myself, and I like to get out there and get these people in, and then after we get them in, we can start sorting them according, like, is this a keeper or not? Because the bad things are at times you shouldn't be too excited of giving them roles and responsibilities, because some people are just ticking time bombs that after a while their destructive personality traits come out after a while. And that's very much true when if you mitigate the effects if you're just a normal organization, but this will be your number one stumbling block if you are a out and out fringe political organization, because in that case you're every day you're going to have a new crazy loony coming in through the door, and you have to be able to spot the good people from the loonies.
So would you say that Finnish nationalism, what our enemies would call the Finnish far right, as a whole is far more cohesive in well adjusted than what you see in the Anglosphere?
No, not at all. I would say the same. I see the same proportion of crazy people in the movements. Both here domestically and abroad. The thing is that just how the organizations that they're in treat these people, because a good example would be kind of like how the Nordic resistance movement does it, because they take in the worst of the worst. They sort of work as this first catcher that catches the absolutely most. I mean, some good people go there for sure. I'm just saying that far majority of the crazies go to the Nordic resistance movement, and they have built up their entire structure around how to deal with these crazies. That every single member is a walking potential PR disaster, meaning that they have all of their members on a very short leash, and you have the hierarchical structure where you, after a long time of good works and having proven yourself, then you get to move up in the ranks and have a bit more of freedoms. But otherwise, lower ranked people have no right to speak to the media or do anything. There's like literally just if I uh, would simplify it, when they go on marches, the guy in charge who's often knows what's up and has read a lot of literature, and he knows how to deal with these people. He puts a flag in this guy's hand and says, okay, now you shut up, you say the slogans, you hold the flag, you march from point A to point B, wait for my speech, and then from point B to A. Oh, got it? Right. And then nothing comes out of your mouth except for our slogans. And then, they drill this into their heads. And that way they try to mitigate the damage these people can do when they're on the loose, but they maximize the benefit of having as many bodies as possible represented.
There's a mad Finn on the loose on my stream right now.
Yeah, it was before my handlers coming back and chain me up.
Yeah. So there's nutters over there, but it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong here again, that you are better equipped to deal with them. Is that true? Apart from, say, Identity Europa, which is a recent phenomenon over here.
Yeah, I mean the entire organization that we have here, if of the extreme far right, that is the Nordic extreme resistance movement. I mean, there's other organizations that are not as exoteric as them and are much more attractive for a lot more normie type people. But in general, I think the organizational culture when it comes to right-wing political organizations here in Northern Europe, due to partly the heavy censorship that comes from the government side here in Europe, because after the Nazi Party was made illegal, they've had to develop in this direction where they're very good at handling and mitigating the effects of spurgs within their movement.
David, why do you think that we haven't evolved these responses and habits in the Anglosphere, with the exception of IE, which seems to be anomalous based upon the good leadership of Casey?
Too individualistic, I guess. I mean, I don't have a great answer, but I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that this takes off in the continent more easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's just, there doesn't seem to be any standards at all for, I mean, I guess there are some now in the wake of civil, but like, we were letting in anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah, vetting is definitely important, and to not have any liberties really for the people in the lowest ranks, because until they've The problem, I think a great man once wrote that the problem of a revolution is that it pulls in so many, quacks that at some point sooner or later you have to deal with them and set things right, because you have to tell these people that it's not their revolution, it's yours, and we can't go in that direction. It means that we have to, if we really want to be successful, it's good to have those extra bodies, the extra people who are repeating your slogans, but once you let them in to your organization, they are an ambassador for it anywhere they go, and then you have these loose cannons that you haven't fully taken the time to learn what's going on inside their head, to fully understand that where their sympathies lie, and then they go out and they shoot off their mouth, and suddenly you have these national headlines that Identity Europa wants to dismantle the United States and enslave Haitians, or something crazy, something really esoteric and dumb.
Yeah, you have to be conscious that you're in a hostile environment. So not only do you have to present yourself as you would normally, you actually have to take extra precautions to balance against the unfair coverage you'll perceive. So everything has got to be pristine, absolutely top notch.
Yeah, but it's one of the differences between America and the continent is that the denazification happened here at a completely different cultural level than it ever, or well, not cultural, but a governmental level. That all these laws were passed into the books, and here where in original clown world, where we amend and you just rewrite our constitutions every decade, was a lot of constitutional decrees as well, that these kinds of organizations should be outlawed. And that's why the Nordic resistance movement as well are going to be outlawed here in Finland now, because they had a they had a case where one of the Spurgs got off the leash, and he drop kicked some sort of low life a druggy hippie Antifa guy who spat at him at a rally. So he ran up and drop kicked him, and then the hippie died. So now they're going to make it the resistance movement legal here. But that's what happens when you recruit people into your ranks who have several accounts of aggravated assault in their criminal record.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, so would you say that Finland is more advanced with the nationalist organization than other Nordic countries? What's the story there?
The number one right now, you're seeing like this. If we go, all the Nordic countries have very strong like nationalist roots due to our history. That's there. That's this tradition, or should I say, this legacy of nationalism. But if every generation has its own struggles, its own hurdles to overcome, and we need this sort of 21st century, for lack of a better term, nationalism to really be a good response to the questions, the challenges that we're facing nowadays. And when it comes to who has the best organizations right now, and that's hands down the Swedes, because the Swedes have been the most hard hit by clown world and 21st century liberalism, and it's become such a big problem that everybody can really feel in their day-to-day life, which has made them basically so much human capital has flocked to the far right in Sweden, that they're being able to build up incredibly, like I'm jealous, because we have nothing similar to it in Finland. Part of my reason for having so much faith and putting so much emphasis on on the people is because, you know, what we saw in Sweden is the opposite, where the elite was working against the people at every turn, and the entire thing that they've built up right now is a populist revolt, more or less, that comes completely grassroots up, and they're getting really close to making very strong and meaningful change in Sweden in the election that's coming in 2 weeks.
Aha, I see. Well, maybe what you need in Finland, you need the alliance with New Zealand. That's where it all turns around. That's when you leapfrog Sweden.
We're gonna put our money on that.
Yeah. Well, I think we're just about coming to the end of our show. I'd be remiss though if I didn't end without talking about sips. Big Boy Streams are about sips after all. I've had a lovely Deep Spring orange and mango soda. What about you guys?
Just generic tea bought from the store.
Keeping it nice
I've
and simple. I like it. Cozy. See, Groip is our pro tea, David.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
It is a cozy drink.
agreed.
I want to apologize first to David if I've been talking so much. You've barely had a chance to say
No, I
anything
mean,
during this.
it was interesting to hear about the Nordic countries and what's going on there.
Yeah, well, it's been great being able to perhaps enlighten a few listeners. The record crowd, I think we broke 20
Yeah,
people.
we got up
That's
to 25 people at one stage. So I think that's a combination of Finn power and goat power. But behind it all, the magic juju of the lemur.
Yeah, Finns and goats, we both have our grievances with Muslims.
Well said.
Yeah. So closing thoughts for the evening, or well, the morning for you, I guess. Blitzy, shall we start with you and then go to David?
The fuming Finn that came into this stream is now 100% cozy and relaxed, and very, very much so that have to go buy new hats because I feel like my brain has grown again one size from talking all these big brain thoughts.
And big sips too. Have you been
And big
sipping?
sip. I have been sipping. I've been sipping
Ooh,
an
good to hear.
off-brand energy drink that has become my favorite here.
You're a 32-year-old boomer Finn.
No, but I aspire to be one very soon.
That's what we need. This is the sort of goals that we need. David.
Just read about social networking, because that is absolutely what we need. We need to get the right guys, our guys with the most agency, together, working together.
Yeah, sounds. I'd 100% endorse that. Stick around, you two. We'll have a chat off air. But I think this has been very good. I've certainly enjoyed it. Just a few housekeeping notes. I've got some more streams coming up this weekend. I'll be streaming 12 hours from now, almost exactly. Special guest coming in. And then we'll have a stream with John Hampson on Deleuze on, I think it will be, it's Friday night in America now, right, David, or midnight?
It's like 2 a.m., so I'm probably going to duck out of the off-air conversation and just sleep.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so it'll be like some... I'm getting tired too, but it'll be 12 hours after the next 12-hour stream in my morning. So and then I think I'm going to be talking with Sin sometimes on American Sunday. So yeah, you'll see the countdowns on the streams. I've already got them up. So thanks to everybody in chat. It's been a good stream, and with that, I will bid you adieu.